Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Ysanne Lewis. I have known her for a few years, but really only got to know her properly over the past couple of years. Her pedigree is amazing. It's fascinating, and her topic, I'm sure, will keep you fascinated. So without further ado, welcome, Ysanne.
Thank you, Mindy. Lovely to be here. Hello, everyone.
Exactly. It's not just you and me anymore. So I would like to start by dispelling a myth that people have about astrology being a bit woo-woo, kind of out there, something that most mere mortals can't understand and don't get involved with. Tell us what the truth is, please.
Oh, truth. What is truth? Basically, I trained as an astrologer 45 years ago. That dates me. I did. I trained for 2 years. In fact, in Europe, Scandinavian countries, and in the Far East, they train for a lot longer. Whether that's a better thing or not, I'm not sure. Because one thing I've learned with my work and over time is to simplify it. Definitely to work with the client. It's not all in the books. And it's a fascinating subject. The word astrology means language or study of the stars. And it's been around forever. I suppose star religion was the first religion. And the first horoscopes were absolutely brought about and formulated going back thousands of years. And it makes you wonder, how on earth did they do that? And that's a question that's not easily answered, definitely. The second oldest profession in the world. Give that a thought. It's certainly been around a long while, as long as there have been people to observe. We get a lot of our words we use from astrological language, including the days of the week. Monday, moon day. And the word moon links with mother, month, matter, which is interesting. We have Thursday, Thor's day, which is linked with Jupiter, throwing the thunderbolts. Saturn, Saturday. Sunday speaks for itself, doesn't it, Mindy? We also get the word disaster, which means fall of a star. We get the word sidereal, star time. There's a lot of other words as well. How does it work? If I knew that, I would be a multimillionaire, if I could prove it. But there's a great interest in the scientific world, apart from those who are really skeptical, who have very, very closed minds. Because I think the important thing in life to stay young and everything else is to be curious. Everything changes. And there's a great deal of research being done into the subject. And above all, we're people of timing. We're creatures, if you like, of timing. We're these inner timekeepers. And there are cycles set in motion when we're born, when anything is born, like our interview today, Mindy is born at 10 o'clock. And it indicates the whole picture. So what is the truth of it? How long is a piece of string? As I mentioned, I trained for 2 years. When people are very critical, I say, well, go and study it, and then we'll have an informed discussion.
Wow. Thank you so much. I didn't know about some of those words like disaster and the star timing, or I can't remember how you put it. That leads nicely into my next question, which is how normal people can use the stars to go about their daily lives, to improve those lives. I know this is really your work. It's not only doing horoscopes and doing the readings, although that's a major part of it. It's to see what people can do with that. Am I right?
Yes. Well, what they can do with it, with the information they read about or hear about, I'd call it a well-versed, experienced astrologer, because I would like to add, Mindy, a lot of damage is done. We do often believe what we hear very easily. Very easily. We don't question. And we can carry that through our lives sometimes. So an inexperienced astrologer can actually cause quite a bit of damage. The same applies to tarot readers, psychics, and indeed many subjects, a coach. I think you'll agree with me on that one. So the first thing is that they can actually work with that information. When I do a reading, it's recorded, and the ideal thing is to hear it back. Not every day, it's about 90 minutes. And each time you hear it, you'll hear yourself and the astrologer see something not different, but it's more insightful because of how you're hearing it. So it's important to work with it like a toolbox. Now, you mentioned about how the average everyday person, if you like, the normal person, can link with the stars. Well, a very simple way, and it's not a star now, it's our nearest neighbour, it's our nearest friend, if you like, the moon, satellite. The moon cycles we can follow. These are easily obtained. You'll find that in most diaries, almanacs, in the newspapers even. So why do I emphasize the moon? Well, firstly, because it's something we can all follow. And secondly, it is incredibly important to understand our own rhythms. And the moon is very linked with rhythms and indeed the tides. When in early days, ancestors, when they set out to sea, a ship is built, sure, and it likes to be in a harbour, but it's not meant to stay there. We're meant to go out and travel and go with the tides and currents. And those tides are important to understand, to follow the star, to follow the North Star, particularly in those days. And the moon patterns, if you wanted to have a major event, a celebration, you might, in the times gone by when there wasn't electricity, choose a full moon. Why? There's lots of light. And if you wanted to, I've just been in a little town called Littlehampton, which apparently had a lot of smugglers once upon a time. And they got away with it a lot more than other towns in the area for various reasons. But I'm pretty sure they didn't land when there was a full moon. They would choose a dark moon, new moon phase, for obvious reasons. Yes. So if you want to go under the radar, and that applies to the inner world as well, the time of the new moon and the 3 days leading up to it and afterwards, perhaps good times to reflect more, to go to ground a little bit more, to seed projects and ideas. That's always exciting, particularly in businesses. And then with the waxing moon, the 2 weeks leading up to the full moon, there's more and more light, and we can start to manifest those ideas. We can bring them into the public scope, if you like, that platform. And then with the waning moon, after the full moon, there's that time of tying up the loose ends. Interestingly enough, the fluid levels are higher, Mindy, at a full moon. We actually, Weight Watchers know this. We have a little bit more weight on us, minuscule, but we have. And I'm going to use that word, which we do use a lot, bloat, more at a full moon. It's well known that. And of course, the tides are higher. Some surgeons really don't like, and they don't indeed, operate at a full moon because of hemorrhaging. It's higher, greater. And the big redwood trees in America, there's huge ones. Some of them you can even drive through. Not sure about that, but you can. Not a nice idea, though, I think. But they cut these big portions through these big trees. But anyway, the sap is huge. And they're marked with the phase of the moon when they're cut, even to this day. Because they have to be cut at a full moon, this sap is greater and can damage the wood. And therefore, the wood is of less value, though usable. And at the new moon time, it's marked with the phase of the new moon where the sap is less and the wood is therefore more valuable. So a few little things on that. So I'm not saying you're going to go out and cut down redwood trees or operate, but I think in our lives we can look at the new moon time as a time of seeding. 1 week on is almost a time of rooting that idea more, making it solid, starting to see the shoots coming up. And at the full moon, you've got the whole blossom, the whole picture, which is a lovely, lovely idea, I believe, to work with. We can also find out occasionally where the planets are. We read about these quite often in the newspapers. Somebody does a spread on Jupiter. Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. It spends 1 year in each sign. And when Jupiter goes over, say, your sun sign, whether you're an Aries, Taurus, Gemini, whatever, it can be a year of expansion for you and to take advantage of it. So unless you can read an ephemeris, and I will put the, here we are, June 2022. Can you see that?
I can, but our listeners who are listening to audio only will have to look it up.
Okay. Well, ephemeris is like another language. It is a language. And therefore, it's something we really need to get information about. There are some very good how-to books on astrology, particularly how to translate that picture of the chart, the birth chart, which is based on the time, ideally, the full date, and the place of birth. It's the core coordinates. Yeah, the core coordinates that you might tap into a sat nav, but not that. So you can actually learn to interpret it. But we have all this knowledge within us, Mindy. We have this knowledge all within us. These planets are like actors or characters that live within us, which go on and off stage. And actually, we can feel it. So when I do a chart with a client, they actually, in the main, sense what's going on. They say, oh, yes, that's what I was feeling. Or what I was feeling should happen next or not happen next. Because we are our birth charts, set into motion when we're born.
Set into motion when we're born. That will sound delightful to some people and depressing to others because, you know, nobody wants to think that things are set in motion and they're fixed. And I know that's not what you mean. It's just interesting because, you know, people nowadays want choice. They want to make their own decisions, carve out their own path, have their own life. And we don't want to take that away from people. The thoughtful leader, in fact, is the person who takes into account where they are, maybe how they got there, and considers the environment, maybe considers their chart and timings, and makes those choices based on that. Because it's both, isn't it? Or have I got it wrong?
I think what I meant was set into motion, that everything is moving. From that moment in time where the planets are at fixed positions, the moon is where it is at that particular degree of the zodiac, they start moving and we start moving. And that outer cosmic clock and our inner clock work together. They work together. I'm a full believer, fanatical actually, about free will and choice. I've worked with a lot of Christians who obviously, you know, like the concept of free will and they don't believe in fate. And I go along with the Bible a great deal from that point of view. Although the early church used astrology for those first few centuries, it's when later on it became used in the marketplace, if you like, for fortune telling. In the early days, it was used for picking the right time for celebrations, for ship launching, whatever it may be, for a coronation. And fortunately, Mindy, in recent times, it's been used much more at the psychological level. So cycles are troughs and peaks. And I was mentioning about the sea. Ideally, you don't swim against the tide or when the tide's going out. Okay, you've got free will. Oh, yes, you've got free will. You can do that. But it could end up as a great disaster. You actually cooperate with the tides within you. And when those cycles are their peaks, if you like, their optimum times for activity. And again, I would say that we actually do know our timing of troughs and peaks, of when to move forward and when not. And yes, we can go against all that, but it takes up a great deal of energy.
So, Ysanne, you were talking about looking at the moon and what you can do or what ideally someone could be doing in the various cycles of the moon. And you've just mentioned that people used to look to the stars and the planets and the moons to make decisions about celebrations, to make key decisions in life. Do you still believe that is a good idea? And tell us about the kinds of decisions that people can make to time important events in their life, because this bit is fascinating to me.
Thank you. Yes, that's a very good question, Mindy. Oh, definitely. And I get a lot of people asking me to come up with a good signature. It's a lovely word, signature, where the planets are, what is rising over the horizon at the time. The eastern horizon is like our symbolic dawn. When we perhaps run an event, a wedding starts. It doesn't sometimes always matter if it starts a little later. It's what is set in time, or when a contract is signed, an investment is made. And I do a great amount of work for people in that respect. So therefore, I would look at the type of event. Do they want a big audience? Is it supposed to be small? Is it more practical? Is it more feeling, creative? Is it meant to be very chatty, a lot of interchange, interaction? And therefore, I would look at the planets on that day, the signs of the zodiac they're in. And again, that's quite complex because all the planets are there, but the signs of the zodiac they're in, and I've mentioned already that Jupiter spends 1 year in a whole sign. Okay. Mars is 20 months going through the signs. The moon whips through them through a sign every 2.5 days. And Mercury is very, very quick. The word Mercury, Quicksilver, is very pertinent there. And so therefore, I would look at prominent, dominant planets, their positions they're in, depending on the activity of the event. And if somebody wants a great celebration for weddings, is one idea. The sign of Leo would be a very strong player, if you want to call it that, because that's the height of fire, the height of summer, and it's ruled by the sun, and there's a lot of dynamism and presence with it. So I would look at that, and I would also look at the time of the event and see what sign of the zodiac, one of the 12, is coming up over the horizon. Its face to the world. So I don't know your birth chart, Mindy. I know my own, of course. So I'm born under the sign of Scorpio in November. That's my core essence. And when I was born at 1:20 p.m., a certain sign was coming up over the horizon for that 2-hour window of the day, which was Aquarius. So Aquarius is very much the face, how I come over to people is a little bit more zany. It's very futuristic. It's an air sign, whereas Scorpio, water sign, is more private, more intense. Yes, they can work together well, but what people would see would be the rising sign in the main. So that's just a little picture of how you can time and tune into running an event. And why do we say 12 signs of the zodiac? Well, because they run close to the ecliptic and they link in with the seasons of the year, the 4 seasons, and we are our bodies. I think you'll agree, Mindy, from nature.
You've stunned me with several pieces of information, Ysanne, but I just have to clarify what I heard. Did you say Aquarius is an air sign? Because I always thought that should be water, and Scorpio is a water sign. Is that what you just said?
Correct. Very good. There are 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. That's from tradition. And the fire signs, just to give you a pep talk on this one, is of Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. And the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. And the earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. They have planets which rule them. They're in their domicile, if you like. They're happy there. And therefore, for example, you felt, how can Scorpio perhaps be water? Well, it's ruled by Mars, which is a fiery energy, but it's the depths of water. It's like the deep ocean. Whereas Cancer might be a lake or pond. Pisces could be a river. You've got different types of components of the elements. So this is a very simple way of looking at astrology. And indeed, when I look at a chart, I'm looking to see the distribution of the elements, the signs and planets. Are you more watery? Are you more airy? And airy, I think that speaks for itself. Earthy would be more, let's prove it, let's have it more grounded. Water would be trusting the invisible more, going with that flow. Fire would be that spontaneity. Air would be somebody who needs to have connection, explaining things, communication. So you look at that and you interpret accordingly, and that would apply to running an event as well.
I think this is fantastic information. Listeners, don't panic, because there is a lot to take in, and you can see there's 45 years of experience here. You want to make sure you connect with Ysanne. Her details are in the bio. They're below the show notes. You can take your own notes, of course, but do reach out to her and connect. We're not finishing just yet. That's usually my last message. But I could kind of sense our listeners going, oh my goodness, this is so much information, and they want to grasp it all. I must finish with a question about thoughtful leadership, because I do really believe most people are capable of being more thoughtful than they tend to be. That's the most polite way that I can put it. How does astrology, and using astrology and timing in particular, lend itself to thoughtful leadership?
Well, I believe we are all leaders. It's how we use that power. Whether we're thrust into leadership, which some people are, and they learn the hard way, or maybe they take to it like a duck to water. They're kind of born with it, and you can see that in the birth chart. Planets overhead at birth, overhead, where they're all overhead, but they're in that position furthest, and what we call the midheaven. People born around about lunchtime, or planets are overhead at lunchtime, literally overhead. They indicate people who have great leadership qualities in different fields. And sometimes people just want to learn to be a leader, and isn't that beautiful? And that demands thought. They all demand thought. I think timing is paramount. We can't always choose our timing, like we can't always choose when we're born. There's some people or some parents do try and do that. It doesn't always work, though. Maybe our souls, and I do believe in the soul, are meant to come at a certain time. But I think that timing is very important. And when we go with that timing, which we actually know inside, remember I said earlier, the birth chart is yourself. If you can really sense that timing, you're on a roller. And when you start doubting, listening to other people too much, then that timing can go askew. And, how do you move forward with that? So I think thoughtful leadership and timing are synonymous. And knowing, particularly the moon cycles, knowing where you are in your natural calendar, because we have these natural calendars within us, knowing where we are during that year can help our leadership powers, definitely. I don't know whether that answers your question at all, Mindy.
Of course it does. It was an answer, and it was thoughtful, and it shows great insights about things that I believe people don't spend a lot of time thinking about, because most people do not know a lot about this subject. I'm sure you'd agree, Ysanne.
Oh, yes.
So as we conclude this episode, I just want to share that normally I love talking, and I've loved speaking with you today. And normally I'm not a terribly visual person. We can all access all of the senses and modalities: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. However, a very, very strong image came into my mind as you were talking about somebody swimming with the tide instead of against the tide. And I have a lot of friends who do not a lot, a few friends who do wild swimming or who like swimming outdoors. And, the idea does kind of scare me. I'm not such a confident swimmer. I don't spend a lot of time swimming, which is probably a cycle. That's how I don't get better and get more confident. I can swim. I just had this vision of the tide helping somebody instead of fighting. And I guess the metaphor is people may feel that they're fighting against the tide, and it's not a very nice feeling. And this not only in the water, in life. Oh my gosh, everything's against me. And so just a very, very short message of hope. And your best tip, Ysanne.
Well, my best tip is trust your instincts. Slow down a little. Our brains are the only thing that don't pause. Music pauses, dance does, conversation. And our bodies will pause. Oh, yes, they will if our brains don't. So actually slowing down a little, pausing, simplifying. Our ancestors had to all the time, and we really are now rather overloaded. And therefore, beautiful tapestry overhead, the nature cycles beneath our feet. We are strung between, if you like, the cosmos and nature. They will give us those messages. We will feel in tune with them. We will not feel alone. We cannot feel alone when we are connected with the rhythms of the cosmos and nature. And to know they're there, really know they're there. And therefore, you become a natural astrologer.
How beautiful is that? We will leave it there. It's been amazing speaking with you today. I said right at the beginning, it's fascinating. And I think I'm more fascinated now than I was at the beginning. The natural and professional astrologer, Ysanne Lewis, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to spend time with you. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.